What is up, people? This is Nicholas Arcicada coming to you hot from the science fiction void that happens to be blue for some reason. Today we're going over the list of my top 50 science fiction movies of all time. Now keep in mind, this isn't a complete list of all the science fiction movies I like. I've also tried to keep some of the bigger science fiction movies on here and give some attention to the real gems that I don't think get enough clout. Like, for instance, E.T. isn't on here. I think E.T. is a great movie, but I'm trying to go for just the science fiction movies I think demonstrate science fiction really well as a genre. And I frickin' love science fiction, so putting this list together was a lot of fun. And with that said, let's get into it. These are my top 50 science fiction movies of all time. I'm going to be going fast over these, so try to keep up. At number 50, we have Super 8 from J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg. I think this is a movie which really understands what Steven Spielberg was going for when he made E.T., but it also has the J.J. Abrams element. Now, a lot of people will tell you that J.J. Abrams' movies aren't very good, but in the right hands, you know, when he's in his element, I think he can do really well. Super 8 is fun, has a fun plot, fun premise, an original premise, and really cool-looking set design and everything. It is a little heavy on CGI, but we're only at number 50 here. Super 8 is fun. It perfectly captures the spirit of something like E.T. or The Goonies or an 80s kids adventure movie, but it's not boring or lame like Stranger Things. It's a really good homage to that kind of movie. Super 8 is a perfectly serviceable science fiction vehicle, and you should check it out if you haven't. It also has a fun alternate reality game built around it. The marketing is genius, and I just think it's nice to see two really, you know, I mean, I wouldn't say J.J. Abrams is always the best, but like some movies of his I do enjoy. I mean, the guy does have kind of a direction that he wants to go in. At 49, we got The Adventures of Pluto Nash with Eddie Murphy. I think a lot of Eddie Murphy movies just have a really fun concept, and they never get nearly as much credit as they should. The Adventures of Pluto Nash is Eddie Murphy's foray into science fiction. It deals with things like lunar colonies. That's always fun. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is a great book. But The Adventures of Pluto Nash, you have Eddie Murphy playing Pluto Nash, a spacefarer, a real, you know, space action hero, and it's just a fun shoot 'em up, you know, just a fun outer space adventure. I think you should give The Adventures of Pluto Nash a try if you haven't seen it. You'll be pleasantly surprised by how good it is. At 48 here, we got Idiocracy, classic staple. Everyone who's a Mike Judge fan knows Idiocracy. I think Maya Rudolph's great. She's really funny, and Idiocracy is an interesting premise. Now, admittedly, Mike Judge didn't invent it. There were science fiction stories before this which explored this concept, but I think Idiocracy is good in that it takes a concept that you don't see explored that much and says, you know, what if this happened? And turns that into a full movie. It was a big risk when Mike Judge did it, and it's a cult favorite. It's weird, it's fun, it's Idiocracy. Check it out. At 47, we got The Island of Dr. Moreau, the version with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. I like me some Dr. Moreau. I think it's one of H.G. Wells' best stories, and this is the only adaptation for me, the Marlon Brando version, that manages to capture the kind of unbridled, like, weird shit that Dr. Moreau has going on his island. So I couldn't recommend any other. Marlon Brando was just born to play this wacky mad scientist just going crazy on his island, creating these person-animal abominations. So The Island of Dr. Moreau, great movie. Star Trek Generations is at number 46. This is a fun movie. The practical effects are spectacular. You'll like it if you're a Star Trek fan. You'll like it even if you're not a Star Trek fan. It's just a really well put together science fiction movie. As always, cast Next Generation is great. William Shatner is great. And Malcolm McDowell is one of his best movies. Star Trek Generations totally kills it. At 45, we got Coneheads. Coneheads, absolute classic. Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin are so funny together as Mr. and Mrs. Conehead. One of the best SNL movies, and of course, pretty much the only SNL sci-fi movie, and I think it works really well as a sci-fi movie. I think the Coneheads' home planet is really well developed on. I think it's expanded on nicely, especially since in the sketches that the movie references so much, the Coneheads aren't explored to their full potential. It's nice to see a movie that really gives these characters, their full thing. And there's a lot in common with This Island Earth, especially the part where they travel to Rimulac, but Coneheads is fun. And there's a lot of stuff in Coneheads that is just really neat to think about. 44, we have Tarantula. This is one of my favorites, classic 1950s B-movie, but it's about a giant spider. There's also a guy with acromegaly. I think acromegaly is an interesting facial condition, and the makeup they give this guy is just really, really wild. It's a lot of fun. There's like a monkey at one point, and Clint Eastwood has a brief cameo at one part. And the spider just looks great. A lot of old sci-fi movies look fake, but the tarantula in Tarantula looks really scary. And if I was out in the desert and I saw this giant spider just ambling toward me, I mean, I'm not even scared of spiders, but like if it was that big, yeah, that'd be pretty freaky. So Tarantula is at number 44. At number 43, we have Village of the Giants, yet another adaptation of H.G. Wells's work, albeit a loose one. This is a really fun science fiction movie. It's very 60s. It's about this group of teenagers that eat this wacky stuff that makes them turn huge, and then they just commandeer this entire town. And it's a lot of fun, I think, because, it's just very 60s. There's a whole 60s vibe going on. It's definitely stuck in its time, but Village of the Giants is the kind of movie that you'd want to pop on just for the heck of it. At number 42, we have Weird Science. Underrated John Hughes joint, and you have that iconic theme song from Oingo Boingo, which is just a spectacular jam. Kelly LeBrock is great, of course. I used to see commercials for this on the Sci-Fi Channel all the time, or recordings of the Sci-Fi Channel from the 90s, and I always thought it looked really cool, and it lives up to the hype. It's an adaptation of an EC Comics property, much like Tales from the Crypt, and if you like Tales from the Crypt or you like Creep Show, this does for Weird Science what Creep Show does for Tales from the Crypt. And I mean, science is just best when it's weird, so Weird Science is a very faithful adaptation of capturing some of that, like, eclectic 1950s science schmaltz, and just saying, what if these two youngsters could just make this weird supermodel that's like a Frankenstein, and fun ensues, the John Hughes formula. At number 41, we have Gas, and I've made a whole review of this one. Roger Corman's best science fiction movie, hands down. Better than Death Race 2000, better than Little Shop of Horrors, which I guess you'd technically consider mostly a horror movie, but Gas just has a really interesting premise, and I like seeing science fiction that tries new things and asks interesting questions, like what if everyone over the age of 25 just died? That's such a cool thing to think about, and it really sets the world in a whole new perspective, whole new trajectory. So Gas is amazing, fantastic. If you haven't seen it, check it out. At number 40, we have Star Wars. Not any one Star Wars movie in particular, just Star Wars. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. I'm also just including the sequels and prequels here, because, none of them are bad, I'd never say a Star Wars movie is, bad. I watched Rise of Skywalker, I watched Force Awakens, and I know that those are very controversial. Oh, The Last Jedi is so it's Star Wars, come on. You go to the Star Wars movie to watch shit blow up and lightsabers, and, it's not, high concept sci-fi, but I think Star Wars deserves a spot at number 40 just because, it's not the best sci-fi, it's fun. I can watch Star Wars and be really entertained, so I gotta give Star Wars credit in that respect. At number 39, we have Slaughterhouse-Five, an adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's novel of the same name, which is about Billy Pilgrim becoming unstuck in time. Now, I found that a lot of Kurt Vonnegut adaptations, like that slapstick adaptation with Jerry Lewis, they're complete trash because Kurt Vonnegut is a very cerebral science fiction writer. He doesn't adhere to the tropes of the genre, and as a result, it's hard to adapt his work into anything coherent. I think the Slaughterhouse-Five movie works because it's probably the most approachable of his work, the easiest to understand. It's a breezy novel. It's pretty short, so it's not that hard to adapt it. And I think Slaughterhouse-Five, the movie, does a pretty good job of that. I think the story of Billy Pilgrim and the Tralfamadorians is a pretty fun story, and bringing it to the cinematic medium doesn't hurt me. Number 38, we have Westworld. Like I said, I'm not including all the big blockbusters on here. Didn't include Jurassic Park, because I think Westworld is a better science fiction story than Jurassic Park, because, it's the first movie to use computer-generated imagery. It's the first to really talk about what would happen if robots rose up, aside from, of course, HAL 9000, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And Yul Brynner's performance as the cowboy android is just legendary. Westworld is a really well-structured universe with a lot of, cool ideas and whatnot, and that's why it's now a whole show with Anthony Hopkins and everything, because, it's just such a fun thing to think about. And all the way back in the 70s, very ahead of its time movie. So, as far as science fiction goes, that's really all you can ask for to be ahead of your time. At number 37, we have Empire of the Ants. This is yet another H.G. Wells adaptation, or it calls itself one. I don't think there are very many, really faithful H.G. Wells adaptations, because they kind of border on steampunk, because they're very early science fiction. A lot of them, like Village of the Giants and Empire of the Ants, transplant them to a more modern setting. Nonetheless, I think Empire of the Ants is fantastic. I was considering putting Invasion of the Bee-Girls on here, but I think that movie is kind of misogynistic, even though it looks great. I think Joan Collins in Empire of the Ants is just a spectacular film heroine. This is one of her best roles. And Empire of the Ants is so fun. Just these giant ants. One of the best of the, insect movies of the 70s, which was a big thing. There's one about bees, there's one about worms, which I guess aren't insects, but whatever, And Empire of the Ants is just great. There's a part where you see how the ant sees with, compound vision or whatever it's called. There's, 3 different ways that they show the ants practically, so a really fun movie. Empire of the Ants is great. At 36 here we got Fantastic Voyage. I've done a whole review of this one as well. Fantastic Voyage is underrated. It's really, really good. It's got Donald Pleasance, it's got Raquel Welch, and the visuals. It's a beautiful freaking movie. It looks fantastic. It looks incredible. And if you like watching just fun-looking movies, and this one's for you. But it doesn't just look pretty. It's also a neat concept that I don't think has ever been done to such an extent before or since. So Fantastic Voyage is a huge winner in my book. Fantastic Voyage. At 35, we have Spaceballs, probably my favorite Mel Brooks movie. I like it a little bit more than Blazing Saddles. Spaceballs is great. You got Mel Brooks playing multiple characters. You got John Candy, always great. You got Joan Rivers, also really great. And there are those who say Spaceballs is just a parody of Star Wars, but I think Spaceballs is probably the best science fiction parody we're ever going to see. And when I see people compare it to Galaxy Quest or something, I'm just sick to my stomach, because Galaxy Quest is hot garbage, but Spaceballs is phenomenal. It's really funny, and Mel Brooks does a great job. He clearly understands the movies he's making fun of, which is necessary for a spoof. And Spaceballs. You couldn't ask for anything better. At 34, we have Cherry 2000. Cherry 2000 is a really great-looking movie. Some of the effects in this just kind of melt your brain, and you wonder, how do they do this? Cherry 2000 is interesting. It's about sex robots, which are currently an emerging industry. And I think Cherry 2000 is very ahead of its time, because it was made in the 80s. And, when that wasn't even possible yet to have a robot that you had sex with. So I think Cherry 2000 is interesting. It's a very cerebral type science fiction movie. Lester is a great antagonist, easily one of the most legendary sci-fi antagonists, and Cherry 2000 is interesting because it presents a futuristic view of the United States, which is very hedonistic and fast-moving. It talks about the pace of technology kind of outrunning people. People can't keep up with how fast the technology is moving along. I think that's pretty cool. At 33, we have The Blob. I can't get enough of The Blob. I think the reason it's great is because unlike other 50s B movies that are like cheesy schlock, The Blob is really self-aware. The theme song's killer, and it invents so many of the tropes and motifs that are referenced in plenty of other sci-fi movies, like the old farmer that finds the alien artifact out in the middle of the forest, and the small town setting. And The Blob is just incredible. I flippin' love The Blob. It's so fun to look at. It's a cool looking thing. I can't get enough of The Blob. I can't recommend The Blob enough. If you haven't seen The Blob, then blob out tonight and watch The Blob. You're gonna be blobbing all the way. At number 32, we have Groundhog Day. Some of you might not consider this science fiction, but all the time now there's time loop stuff, and I think this is the only movie that ever did time loops correctly. I don't think you can make more than one movie about a concept like this, but for what it's worth, Harold Ramis's direction is incredible. Bill Murray is incredible, and it's probably one of Bill Murray's best movies, if not the best. Also Chris Elliott. So yeah, you really can't hate Groundhog Day, and I consider it science fiction because it asks an interesting question about temporal mechanics, and if that's not science fiction, I don't know what is, but Groundhog Day. Some people might say it's more fantasy because it's never explained, but then again, you have stuff these days with time loops that is very much science fiction, so I see no reason why Groundhog Day can't be. At number 31, we have The Box with Cameron Diaz. This is a movie I don't think gets talked about enough, especially since Cameron Diaz is an excellent actress. She's retired now, which is a real shame because she's in some good stuff. The Box also has Frank Langella, and it's based on a story by Richard Matheson, which was an episode of that horrible 1980s Twilight Zone revival, which I might make a video on sometime. But this movie takes the premise of that story and makes it way better. It's got Cameron Diaz. It is a little heavy on the CGI, and like a lot of things that were coming out in the 2000s, the CGI and overall the 2000s aesthetic is very noticeable. But it feels like an extended episode of Twilight Zone, and classic Twilight Zone at that, which I think is admirable. It really has a lot of charm, and it's trying to do a lot of stuff. And some people might say that it takes the idea like too far, but I think the explanation it gives is actually really satisfactory, and it's a really dark story. But I mean, Cameron Diaz just completely nails it. She's fantastic in this. One of her best roles. The Box is fun, and if you're a Twilight Zone fan, I mean, it's a must watch, because this just feels like they get Richard Matheson and they get how to do a Twilight Zone type story right. So, The Box, really good. At 30, we have Mars Attacks, probably the most CGI heavy movie ever made, but hey, I excuse it because it's based on an iconic property and Tim Burton's at the helm, and it's just got such a talented cast. It's got Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, Pam Grier. Fantastic stuff. And originally it was going to be stop motion, but that would have been too expensive. I can't say I blame Tim Burton. The product just comes out so smooth. Pierce Brosnan, just an all-star cast. It's absolutely phenomenal. It may be possibly Tim Burton's best movie. It's got Tim Burton just written all over it. Ooh. And it's one of the best alien invasion movies. I mean, it's just so fun to see Jack Nicholson play two people at once, and it's so self-aware. It's just such a self-aware, fun movie. There's never a boring moment when you're watching Mars Attacks. Fun stuff. At 29, we have Back to the Future. I've sung the praises of Back to the Future again and again. It's one of the most revolutionary time travel movies of all time. It really changed the game when it comes to time travel. Now, I feel like on this list I'm leaving a lot of the, subgenres and micro-genres of science fiction out. There are a lot, of time travel being one of them. I didn't put Primer on here or anything, but Back to the Future, I think, deserves to be on the top 50 just because of how great the characters are. Everyone brings the heat, and especially Christopher Lloyd, obviously. And it plays around with time and temporal mechanics better than any movie before or since, I think. It's easy to follow if you're just, it's not Primer, it's not confusing, but it's just really fun, and it does for time travel, it makes time travel really fun, and I like that, and Back to the Future is awesome. At 28, we have It Came From Outer Space. This is another of the classic 1950s B-movie schlock tier, but it's really not schlock because it was written by Ray Bradbury. It's based on a Ray Bradbury story. It's got the professor from Gilligan's Island, who's in a lot of actual schlock like This Island Earth, but It Came From Outer Space, I feel, gets overshadowed by Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is obviously also a 50s movie. It Came From Outer Space is cool because it has the theremin, and the alien design is just fantastic. These aliens look so good. They look so scary, and I'm not going to really spoil it, but it's a lot like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In fact, I think Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of ripped it off, so It Came From Outer Space, I feel, is like probably the best alien invasion movie of the 50s, just because excellent source material, Ray Bradbury, and just good acting, really. That's all you can ask for. At number 27, we got Existence. This is the first David Cronenberg movie on the list. I think David Cronenberg does not get enough credit. He is behind some of the absolute creme de la creme of science fiction, easily as much as John Carpenter or something, and Existence is no exception. Jude Law is absolutely spectacular. Jennifer Jason Leigh, obviously one of cinema's earliest gamer girls. Now, in case you didn't know, I'm not a gamer, but I think Existence is a really fun and cool movie, and it's really gross. I like that. David Cronenberg isn't afraid to just make you disgusted. He makes you want to vomit with this stuff, but Jude Law he really sells you on the point of that he has no idea what's going on. Everything is weird, and I like this more than The Matrix. The Matrix isn't on this list because I think Existence is more fun. Instead of being in a computer simulation, it's just a video game, and I like that. Existence is ahead of its time. These days, being in a video game is nothing new, but back when Existence came out, it was like, whoa, And Jennifer Jason Leigh, underrated actress, she's spectacular in this. At 26, we got Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. I don't like Mike Nelson. I like Joel Hodgson. He's my preferred MST3K host, but I think this is probably the best science fiction comedy ever. I mean, so much effort goes into it. You can tell that everyone was really on board with the whole thing, and Dr. Clayton Forrester, just what an iconic and fun character. Also, it has This Island Earth, which is the perfect, I think, movie to make fun of in a Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. Mystery Science Theater 3000, I've done a review on it, and in that review I make the case that Mystery Science Theater 3000 is a very respectable science fiction franchise in its own right, independent of the movies it mocks, and I think the movie is proof of that. It's a really fun cinematic experience. I can only imagine what it must have been like to see this on the big screen when it first came out. Good stuff. At number 25, we have Men in Black. I really like Men in Black. It's one of the best of the 90s, which admittedly were kind of bereft of new and innovative science fiction ideas. I think Men in Black really kicks things up a notch. Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith have great chemistry. The cockroach guy is just so fun to look at as he shambles around and he's all gross and there's cockroaches all over. The CGI is a little outdated, but like Will Smith, who doesn't like the Fresh Prince just being a total like snarky, smart ass as he goes around on his alien hunting adventures. Men in Black, iconic property, obviously, based on a comic. I think the movie is way better than the comic, just because Will Smith, like, who doesn't like him? Number 24, we got Blade Runner. I like me some Blade Runner. One of the best cyberpunk movies. Some people consider it the definitive one, but I think, Neuromancer and Free Jack, and there's a lot of other ones that are equally as good. But I think Blade Runner, as Harrison Ford, obviously, great as Rick Deckard. Rick Deckard's a lot of fun. I also think Blade Runner has a lot of popular appeal because it has Blade Runner 2049, which continues the story in a satisfactory way. Not too many old 1970s sci-fi movies have really good sequels like that. So I think Blade Runner kind of lucked out there. And the practical effects, just the city of futuristic Los Angeles, it looks so good. I think Blade Runner is also notable because it's never outdated. The aesthetic it presents and the city it presents, the world it presents, is deliberately anachronistic. And as a result, it never feels like it's the 80s or it's outdated or anything. Blade Runner is a world unto itself, and it's delightfully weird, and the score by Vangelis is iconic, and Blade Runner, fun. At 23, we have Naked Lunch, the adaptation of William S. Burroughs' book of the same name by David Cronenberg. I think these two really are very compatible. David Cronenberg makes weird, gross movies, and William S. Burroughs writes weird, gross books. And so it's just a match made in heaven. Now, obviously, you can't adapt everything in Naked Lunch because there's so much imagery in the book that, you can't fit it all into a movie. But for what it's worth, Naked Lunch gives it a darn good try. And Naked Lunch is such strong source material that it'd really be impossible for a Naked Lunch movie to be bad. Also because William S. Burroughs had a lot of input on the movie, and I think that helps a lot. When making an adaptation of a book, it's important to have the author of the book kind of on as a technical consultant. At 22, we got Planet of the Apes, Charlton Heston, Roddy McDowall, classic. I like me some Planet of the Apes, just because the ape masks are fun. The premise is fun. It's written by Rod Serling, so it kind of feels like a Twilight Zone episode. Not that much, but just enough to the point where it's some good conceptual science fiction that asks a lot of questions about evolution and devolution and where humans are going to go in thousands of years. There's also a short TV show that came out of Planet of the Apes, which also has Roddy McDowall, and it's also really fun. So if you have the chance to ever see the Planet of the Apes TV show, check it out. I haven't seen any of the sequels of Planet of the Apes, but Charlton Heston, when he says, "Get your paws off of me, you damn dirty ape," it's just so great. It's a blast. Planet of the Apes, spectacular. The remake, it totally sucks though. At 21, we have Sphere. I think Sphere gets overshadowed by The Abyss. A lot of people might confuse it with The Abyss. It's a deep sea movie, but it's really creepy. It's creepier than The Abyss. It's got Dustin Hoffman, Samuel L. Jackson, and it's just so good. It makes you feel the tension grow as they descend deeper into the ocean, and it just consumes them. Dustin Hoffman gives the performance of his life here, and I think Sphere is one of those movies that just why don't more people know about this? It's so good. Again, I think it gets kind of overshadowed by The Abyss. Sphere is awesome. At 20, we have probably the most recent sci-fi movie on this list. When I was looking at the lists of science fiction movies by decade on Wikipedia, a lot of the science fiction movies of the 2010s were just like Captain America and Ant-Man. And, that's not what I watch science fiction for, but Midnight Special is the most recent of, I think, the entire list. It's in 2016, and it has Adam Driver, who, he's in Star Wars, but I think he's really grown as an actor since then. I saw him in The Last Duel. Spectacular in that. He's really growing into his own element. Midnight Special has an original premise. I really like it. And just phenomenal cinematography. Great acting, great pacing. Everything is done really, really well with Midnight Special. So if you haven't seen Midnight Special, check it out. I think it's proof that, you know, science fiction may be a kind of a slump, but there's still those gems every so often that really are like really good. Midnight Special is fun. It's a fun ride, and it'll go places you never expect it to go. At 19, we have Stalker. I'm just including this one on here because, you know, it's every sci-fi fan loves Stalker. I'm a sucker for it. I love that Russian stuff, you know, Stalker. It looks so cool. It looks unlike any other science fiction movie, really. It's a science fiction classic at this point, so ahead of its time. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about Stalker. Watch it. At 18, we got Videodrome, probably David Cronenberg's best movie. Now, some people would call it horror or psychological horror. I'm putting it as science fiction because, you know, I feel like it has to do with TVs and stuff and signals and broadcast antennas, so that's science fiction in my book. Videodrome is obviously gross, as you would expect from a David Cronenberg thing, but it's fantastic. Such a cool concept. I love it. The idea of this mysterious broadcast channel that nobody knows what it is or what it's doing. And that's so big these days with like all this analog horror and stuff. Everyone's trying to replicate the Videodrome effect of some forgotten, abandoned, terrifying TV channel that just like kills people, you know. Candle Cove takes so much, it owes so much to Videodrome, and I think people need to recognize that like Videodrome is so good. It's just great. 17, we got Forbidden Planet. This is the best science fiction movie of the 50s. It's so ahead of its time. It's got Robbie the Robot. Who doesn't like Robbie the Robot? He's iconic. One of the best robots in cinema history. I put him way above like C-3PO. Just such a great, well-designed robot. So charismatic. You also have Leslie Nielsen. I like Leslie Nielsen. He's fun when he's serious. He's fun when he's comedic. You know, you can't dunk on Leslie Nielsen. I've heard that this movie's misogynist, which like I just really don't get how Forbidden Planet is misogynist, because like like the female character, she's very like independent and, you know, ahead of her time. You know, I mean, you know, one of the guys tries to hit on her, but like it's not misogynist. I don't know where that idea comes from. The animation when they're battling the id is just wow. Like superimposing animation on top of actual film. Such a cool effect. And Forbidden Planet feels like a 1950s science fiction movie, but at the same time it does things that none of its peers were doing. It's fantastic. It's something else. If you haven't seen Forbidden Planet, you're in for a lot of surprises along the way, because you'll be thinking like, wow, this was the 50s? You know, it looks and feels like a cheesy B-movie schlock, but it is anything but. It is cerebral science fiction. And that was rare to come by back in the 50s, so kudos to Forbidden Planet. At number 16, we have The Thing. I like me some Kurt Russell, and this is just bomb sauce. I flippin' love The Thing. The practical effects are phenomenal. They are next level. They are proof that you never need CGI, like ever. And The Thing looks so good. Kurt Russell, just who doesn't like seeing R.J. McCready toss that stick of dynamite and just blow the whole place up? It's fantastic. The Thing is such a cool alien. I like everything about The Thing. It's so suspenseful. It's so edge of your seat. It's just I love the Antarctic setting. All the characters play off each other really well. There's just electric chemistry in that movie. At number 15, we have Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I feel like Close Encounters always gets overshadowed by E.T., but it's a better science fiction movie. Richard Dreyfuss is awesome. Terry Garr is awesome. I think Terry Garr is underrated. She's great on Assignment Earth, that episode of Star Trek, and she's very good as Richard Dreyfuss's estranged wife. And Richard Dreyfuss is fun. Also, of course, you got You got the French guy, you got the classic theme by John Williams, and the alien ships just look so good. They look like so good. Proof that nobody ever needs CGI. Obviously, Steven Spielberg's breakout blockbuster, which introduced the world to his kind of directorial style, and I think Close Encounters of the Third Kind is one of the best alien movies, if not the best. It is spectacular. It's a whole new level. If you ever get the opportunity to watch this one on the big screen, do it, because it's very intense, you know. At number 14, we have Barbarella. I think Barbarella is a fun movie. It's got Jane Fonda. It's got like just incredible set design, and I think, unlike Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which came out recently, you know, Barbarella understands how to properly adapt like a 1970s Frenchy comic to a cinematic experience, like the angel guy, and you got the different tubes in the city and everything, and like the maze with the entombed people, and it just looks so fun. It looks like a fun universe that is fun to check out and fun to look at, and you know, everywhere there's just these cool like props and sets and gadgets and gizmos, and it's just overwhelming. Obviously, this is one of Jane Fonda's best movies. She really sells it as Barbarella, I think. There's also Galaxina, which is kind of like off-brand Barbarella, but I think Barbarella easily edges out Galaxina in terms of like the best female-led science fiction epic. It's so good, Barbarella. If you haven't seen it, it's a 60s staple, and it's very French. So there's that. At number 13, we have THX 1138. Better than Star Wars. George Lucas. I'm surprised everyone before Star Wars was commending George Lucas on like American Graffiti, because THX 1138 is so much better than American Graffiti. You would think that after making this his first movie, he would be set for life as a director, but it took until Star Wars for people to really recognize him. But THX 1138 is way better than Star Wars, and the score by Lalo Schifrin conveys the idea of this terrifying underground society so well. I like the Omnibot. It's so creepy. Jesus artificial intelligence. You have the weird lizard. So many fun and creepy moments in this that are like, they just send tingles up your spine. And Robert Duvall, probably the best role of his career, like hands down. Iconic, THX. I mean, it led to being named, you know, that's what the sound quality system is named after, so you know it's got to be good. It's a perfect science fiction movie, and probably the only dystopian science fiction movie I can really get behind, just because the imagery is so cool. And also it's really vague about like the state of the society, which helps because you don't want to be too specific about that. You know, THX just says something is wrong. Something is wrong here, and you know, that's unsettling. It's really, really creepy. At number 12 here, we have Killer Klowns from Outer Space. What more could be said about Killer Klowns from Outer Space? A sequel has been in development hell for quite some time. Maybe it already came out, I don't know. But the Chiodo brothers are some of those filmmakers you just wish you saw more of, because this is cinematic gold right here. It's one of the best scary clown movies, but like so much fun stuff, like their spaceships at Big Top, you got the cotton candy cocoons, you got the popcorn guns, you got the such great sets. And the Killer Klowns, I mean, their design is just phenomenal. Obviously, Killer Klowns pays homage to a lot of 50s movies like The Blob, with the farmer who finds the aliens in the middle of the forest and the small town setting, and you know, just tons of stuff. The clowns that come out of the trash can, and like the puppet show, and all the fun shit that the Chiodo brothers are just masters of taking a really ridiculous concept and running with it to the max. And Killer Klowns is like the perfect popcorn fare if you're just looking for mindless spectacle. It's absolutely great. And it's also really low budget. It's an inspiring movie because it does what it has. It does really well with what it has. At 11, we have Dark City. I prefer Dark City any day over The Matrix. Now, Dark City came out first. Some people say The Matrix ripped it off. But, there were a ton of simulation movies coming out at the same exact time, pretty much. It was an explosion in the late 90s. Dark City being only one of them. There's also the 13th Floor, Existence, tons of them. But Dark City, I think, has the coolest aesthetic. But between Existence and The Matrix and every other simulation movie, Dark City has the coolest aesthetic. It gets science fiction. The Watchers look so good. You have the German scientist who's, if you're going to have a scientist, why not make him German? And I think it's cool because unlike the other simulation movies which say, what if we were in a computer or what if we were in a video game, Dark City is like, what if there were just aliens that monitored and controlled everything we see and hear, to the point where, like, the world is real, but it's very manipulated. It's very constructed. It's very fake. It's not a computer simulation. I think that's just such a cool idea, and Dark City does not get nearly as much praise as it should get, because it's just so good. Dark City, the best simulation movie of all time. Leagues above The Matrix. At number 10 here we have Star Trek The Motion Picture. I can't get enough of this thing. Anybody who says that it's not the best Star Trek thing ever is lying to you. The score by Jerry Goldsmith is fantastic. The performances on display from William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley are like the best of their careers, hands down. And Voyager, just what a cool looking alien thing. Just what a cool looking spacecraft. I freaking can't get enough of Voyager. A lot of people say it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's not. It's a Star Trek movie. It takes what made the original series successful and amplifies it into a movie experience. But Voyager is cool. It looks cool. It's not like 2001: Space Odyssey. It's very much a Star Trek movie, but it's the most Star Trek movie that's ever existed. It gets what Star Trek is. It gets the genetic form, if you will, of Star Trek, and it understands Star Trek really well, and just a great movie. Check it out. At number 9, we have Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is ways up the list here from Barbarella, just because I think, like, what Barbarella does, Flash Gordon does so much more awesome. I mean, Flash Gordon is cooler than Star Wars. It's so good. It understands, just like how Barbarella adapts Frenchy science fiction comics really well, Flash Gordon is like the best American science fiction comic adaptation we'll probably ever have. It completely understands what made the original Flash Gordon comics great. You got Ming the Merciless, you got the winged people, you got the tree people, you got the frickin', Central City where Ming the Merciless does his dastardly deeds. Flash Gordon's just the coolest. It's like, you watch Flash Gordon and you just lose 2 hours of your life to this spectacular space romp. It's amazing. Flash Gordon, truly proof that schlock can be so good. Flash Gordon, what a movie. At 8, we have Cube. I really like Cube. It's Canadian, but it's got Nicole DeBoer, who you probably recognize as Ezri Dax from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and the premise is just something else. The premise is so good. I love the science fiction that asks interesting questions, and Cube does just that. It says, what if there was just like a cube, and people were in it, and if you do certain things, you die? That's so weird to think about, and I absolutely like it. I think Cube works because of its mystery. You never know who these people are. You never know what's outside the cube or who really built the cube. There are a few hints laid out here and there, but you never know what the world outside the cube is like. And in this sense, I think it does what the Twilight Zone Episode 5 Characters in Search of an Exit tries to do. Ultimately, it fails because it reveals what's outside the cylinder, and that kind of ruins the mystery of, how the clown and the ballerina are in the same jar together. But Cube doesn't do that. It just says, there's the cube, and only one of the characters escapes, and you never see what happens to him. He just gets out, and you don't know what's outside the cube. It just ends. So, phenomenal. Nicole DeBoer is really good in this, also. Anyway, at number 7, we have Metropolis, the classic science fiction. Obviously, German Expressionism is such a revolutionary genre of film, and Metropolis does things no other movie back then was doing. And it's got the robots, it's got the hover cars, and all the stuff that makes science fiction great. And I think it's so cool to watch. Just the stuff they do with the sets, with 1920s levels of, practical effects. It's amazing. Metropolis is so great. And if you haven't seen it, watch it. You'll be amazed by how ahead of its time it is. But then again, that's what science fiction is. Predicting the future, trying to figure out what's coming next. And Metropolis really aces that. It really gets it. It's like, we're going to have robots, we're going to have big cities and cyber, practically cyberpunk. So check it out, Metropolis. It's something else. It's another level of cool. At 6, we have probably the most underrated sci-fi movie on this list, that being Starman with Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges, and just a really, really great alien movie. I'm putting it ahead of Close Encounters of the Third Kind here, just because I think Starman does something very few alien movies pull off, and that is to actually be very subtle. It's a very under the surface type alien movie, and I just think Karen Allen's so great. She's great in Indiana Jones 1. She's one of those actresses who I feel does not get enough credit because she's just fun. She's a great leading woman, obviously, with Jeff Bridges, and he plays this alien, and she tries to get him back to his mothership. So it's basically like E.T. but romantic, and I think it's leagues above E.T. Just the way it's shot, the way it feels. It's so good. Starman, watch it. It's amazing. At number 5, we have the last 1950s movie on our list. That being The Incredible Shrinking Man, based on a story by Richard Matheson, which I actually had the pleasure of reading in full, and great source material for a movie. The Incredible Shrinking Man it's a deep freaking sci-fi movie. It's in black and white, but it's next level. It feels a lot like Twilight Zone, obviously, because Richard Matheson writes some of the best Twilight Zone episodes, but it's also very much its own thing. It asks such interesting questions about our place in the universe, questions of scale, obviously, and fate, and the direction someone's life is heading in. And it's a very sad movie. It's very depressing, but you tend to forget that it's depressing because the main character tries to remain optimistic about the situation he's been put in and the cards he's been dealt, and by the end you're just you're just overflowing with emotions for this guy, because it sounds funny, but it's really like Oscar-worthy material. The Incredible Shrinking Man, awesome stuff. Richard Matheson really elevated science fiction to the next level. He helped to do that, and for that I completely respect him. Absolute great of science fiction. At 4, we have David Lynch's Dune. Dune is such a cool franchise. I've done a review of Dune, but the 80s version of Dune is a space opera for the ages. Fantastic stuff. And I got to put this high up because it's leagues above Star Wars. It perfectly captures the ideas in Frank Herbert's classic novel. David Lynch is just a fun director. It's got Patrick Stewart. Who doesn't like Patrick Stewart? Dune, the 1980s version. And number 3, we have Earth Girls Are Easy. You might be saying, why put Earth Girls Are Easy so high up on the list? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it is fantastic. It's got Gina Davis. I would argue this is possibly the best movie of Gina Davis's entire career. It's got Jeff Goldblum, Damon Wayans, Jim Carrey, and to top it all off, flipping Julie Brown. It's got music from Julie Brown. It's got the soundtrack is epic. It's got Cosmic Thing by the B-52s, and recently Pretty Girls by Iggy Azalea and Britney Spears tried kind of using the aesthetic of Earth Girls Are Easy, which is ironic because Earth Girls Are Easy itself is trying to capture the aesthetic of 1950s alien movies, and it does an awesome job of making a fun story about 3 aliens that just become total, they're so charismatic. Jim Carrey is awesome, and Jeff Goldblum is so suave and everything. It's amazing. Julie Brown also is, it's kind of a concept movie based on Julie Brown's song, and I think she's just an underrated pop icon. I mean, she practically invented so many of the things you see in pop stars nowadays, and the songs are just a jam, and the concept is so fun. It's the kind of movie that just makes you have complete faith in science fiction and its potential and what it can do. Earth Girls Are Easy, one of the best movies of the 80s, great science fiction movie. At number 3. At number 2, we have 2001: A Space Odyssey. Every Kubrick movie is great, with, I guess, the exception of Dr. Strangelove, which I've never found that compelling, but 2001: A Space Odyssey is absolutely spectacular, and I think it manages to fit a lot of fun stuff into its 2-hour runtime. You got Hell 9000, you got The Artificial Foods, you got Haywood Floyd, you got Dave Bowman, both really great protagonists, and the practical effects. This movie does with practical effects what only a master like Kubrick can accomplish. It is one of the best looking movies ever made. It is the second best science fiction movie, in my opinion anyway, and 2001: A Space Odyssey completely redefined the genre. It is a movie so ahead of its time that even though not everything it predicted about the year 2001 ultimately came to fruition, you don't even care, because the reality it presents is so compelling and well developed that it takes the mind of Arthur C. Clarke and the direction of Stanley Kubrick to make something this awesome. It's truly science fiction on the next level. So if 2001: A Space Odyssey is only at number 2, you might be wondering what's at the number 1 spot on your top 50 list of science fiction movies. If 2001: A Space Odyssey, widely regarded as the best science fiction movie, is only number 2 on your list, what's at number 1? It's The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension, baby. Peter Weller, so cool. Buckaroo Banzai, I think, is science fiction in its purest form. It throws so many ideas at the wall. The story by Earl Mac Crouch is just spectacular. It's got Christopher Lloyd, Jeff Goldblum, and it's just, I think it's an inspiration to filmmakers everywhere that you can do so much with a pretty small budget and a pretty crazy story. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, in fact, tries things that I don't think any movie before or since has tried or will ever try. You'll never see a movie with something as fun and captivating as Dr. Emilio Lizardo or the Hong Kong Cavaliers, but Buckaroo Banzai flippin' went there, and it completely sells it. I can't get enough of this movie. I'm completely obsessed with this movie. I think it's a masterclass in how to make a movie. Just don't care what people think of you, and people will enjoy what you make. So, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai is number 1 on my list of top sci-fi, just because I think it has so many concepts that define sci-fi as a genre all mashed together into one. It's got the aliens, it's got the dimension hopping, it's got the mad scientist who's bent on revenge. It's got all of it. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai is number 1 on my list of top 50 science fiction movies. I put it over 2001: A Space Odyssey just because I'm a bit of a hedonist and I like fun shit, and The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai completely satisfies that. So that's my list of the top 50 science fiction movies of all time. Again, I may have left some out here. Tell me in the comments if you think I did. I try my best, but I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. I might put out some individual reviews of these in the future, because I was only able to touch on them a little bit and compliment them on how great they are. But science fiction is such a cool genre, and I think it needs to be given more respect, and I think there need to be better science fiction movies up in the 2020s, 2030s. I think there need to be more good, solid science fiction movies that pay attention to what makes the genre actually compelling. So that's going to do it for this list. If you liked it, then write to Nicholas Cicada, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado 80206. And I'll see you in the next one, although it won't be here in the sci-fi void. Maybe I'll do a top 50 horror movies, and it'll be the horror void. I don't know. Anyway, sayonara, suckers.